Okay, I call to order the meeting of the Recreational Advisory Committee on Thursday, May 26, 2022 at 2:02 p.m. Are there any errors or omissions in the agenda? Being none, motion to approve the agenda as written, moved by Paul, seconded by Mr. Van Passen. All in favor? And that is approved. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes from the February 17th, 2002 meeting? Okay, seeing none, a motion to approve the minutes of the February 17th, 2022 meeting as written, moved by Paul Anderson, seconded by Chris. All in favor? And that carries. Okay, no deputation. So our first agenda item is the ice allocation policy. Nikki, did you want to open with any comments on that?
Thanks, Kate. The ice allocation policy, I tried to go through and highlight a number of areas that looked like there was a lot of change between the old versus the new. It was a little difficult because it's a completely different policy format. It's been moved into the new county format for policies. So there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of cleanup to wording and things, but the things that were highlighted in yellow were the big key points. So if you want me to go through the policy all the way through, we can go through it together. Or if you just want to start with some questions, it depends on how you want to handle it.
Okay, I'm flexible. Paul, what do you think? Should we go page by page, or did you want to start?
I went line by line through the whole thing today, and I was somewhat chagrined to find that the first 10 pages were the old policy and not the new. So I spent a lot of time making notes that were completely irrelevant. When I get to the new, so I would kind of like to go through it line by line. Nikki, if you can just pull it up. Can you do that?
Yep, we sure can. Just give me 1 second and I'll pull it up, and then I can share my screen with you. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
You can see.
I'll invite her.
You got her? Okay. So basically we are changing. Okay, there's something else I want to throw out to you guys and get your opinion on as well. Something that we've come across and throughout the last year or two is that we don't have a formal facility rental policy either for the county. So most municipalities try to incorporate their ice allocation policy and their facility rental policy into one document, which makes it easier all the way around. My big thing is I don't know whether we want to push that into this one or hold this as an ice allocation policy just so we can keep getting it moving and then create a secondary facility rental policy. So that's something I wanted to start off with first, although the policy that you have in front of you is strictly the ice allocation policy, but I wanted to throw that out just so you guys can think about that as well. So over the course of the last 20 years, we've basically been operating under a very similar policy for the ice allocation. We did do a few little tweaks to it by bringing in the morning prime section of the ice rentals, which gave it a little bit different of a rate. It made it a little less, hoping that we could get more people using it. So that was one little change that had happened. And then there was a little wordsmithing changes that had happened over the course of the last few years, but nothing that's been major. So over the last few months, actually it's probably been even longer than that, our facility booking clerk had been looking at a number of different municipalities and different policies, and has tried to come up with something that works for Norfolk. It's got a bit of a Norfolk flavor, but also encompasses some of the big issues that are surrounding a lot of the ice allocation process. So, some of those process problems are, how to divvy up the ice between minor hockey versus figure skating, who gets how many hours, how do you calculate that? So there's a number of different methods to do that. And one is, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but one is, strictly through the number of registrations. There's another method of looking at it by the program that's being offered and the number of hours each program should be allocated. And so we've tried to come up with a few things. And just so everybody is clear, back in 2018, late in the year, we had taken a policy that's very similar to this one out to the user groups. And they were very much in favor. There was a few things that they still didn't like about it. And then the general manager at the time in community services, with the switchover in council, and it just was something that just kept getting put on the back burner and never ever got brought forward. So this policy has taken that original and kind of brought it more into the new way of looking at things. And now with our new Norfolk minor hockey team, it's kind of helped bring along a few more items that we really have to nail down when it comes to the allocation process, and especially with one less ice pad now than what we used to have. So the other real big sticking point that we are trying to hopefully attain in this ice allocation policy is the time frame in which people can give back ice. So once a rental contract has been firmed and signed, whether or not they're allowed to give back ice, if they are allowed to give back ice, how much time frame, is there a parameter around the amount of times they can amend their contracts, that kind of thing. Because one of the largest impediments is the administration of this ice allocation, because with one facility booking clerk, there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes. And with the current ice allocation policy, there is no limit to changes. There's no limit to amendments. The ice schedulers can contact the facility booking clerk at any time and cancel ice. There's supposed to be the 72 hours notice, which we do adhere to, but the groups still give back their ice, and although they do pay for it sometimes when they're still not using it, but that 72 hours notice is a real stumbling block for us. There's not enough time to resell the ice. We can't market it. It basically ends up sitting vacant most of the time. So being able to incorporate something that is a better method for us to be able to get the ice back and still be able to use, help the groups, and if they're not going to be able to utilize it, but also give us the ability to get it out and market it and hopefully resell it to somebody else. So do you have any questions before we start into the policy itself? None? Okay. So the first section is basically just the basic purpose of the policy, which is saying, the county has the ability to allocate ice and is responsible for ice management and all the general administration. There's really no change to that section at all. The scope of the policy, same thing. It just talks about the responsibility of Norfolk County Recreation Department on the allocation and distribution of ice. And then we kind of get into the policy section. So the first section is the highlighted here, which is the ice allocation distribution. And I just need to pull up the old version so I can tell you how that really changed. And I'm going to pull this over onto a different screen. So this piece here with the ice allocation distribution, it's really important from us, from meeting the needs of the community perspective, and our mandate being able to provide quality programs and that kind of thing to our residents, we ended up taking the initiative to putting our Norfolk County recreational ice programs ahead of our allocations for minor hockey, figure skating, and that kind of thing. In the old policy, the distribution was, I believe minor hockey was first. I'm sorry, I don't have my other policy brought up right in front of me. Kate, can you read? Do you have the, oh, you've got a question there?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the chair, did you want to have us go through this kind of paragraph by paragraph with comments on each, or did you want to wait until one speaker had finished with the document? How did you want to do this?
Well, I think Nikki just checked in with us. What if we go page by page? So if there's any comments on that initial page and this page that we're reading, then if Nikki, are you finished there? Yeah.
No, I'm just going to pull up the old policy so I can tell you the comparison between this ice allocation distribution piece, because it's a key one of the changes.
Okay, so Paul, if when Nikki's done getting the policy to contrast and gives her message about this page, then if you want to go ahead and share your comments, okay?
Yep.
So in the current policy, the ice allocation is based on Norfolk. So the first one is Norfolk County minor user groups or organizations. So minor hockey, figure skating, and all of them get first dibs at the ice in the current policy. So we're asking in this new one to put our recreational ice needs first for our own programming. So that would be our, public skates, our shinny ice, our any programs that the rec department is going to offer, whether learn to skate or that type of thing. And then the second one is tournaments and special events, and that one's really key in the new, because we can, once we get them allocated, it makes the allocation process easier, because the user groups already know that those weekends or that time period is out of date. Whereas the tournaments was all looped in. It was number 3 on the current policy. So so then it would go into the youth sports organization. So your minor hockey, your figure skating, your junior hockey clubs, which would be number 3 in the new, whereas, like I said, it was number 1 in the current. And then we would end up with adult groups, and the balance of it is the same based on the previous or the current one. So really that changes. We're asking to take minor hockey, figure skating off the very first and move them down to number 3, and bringing our own Norfolk County programming from number 3 up to number 1, and implementing the tournaments in between. The adult groups, everybody else would still be down further after the minor groups. Is there any questions on that section?
Paul, I was going to let you go ahead.
Okay. The whole purpose of joining organized sport is to have a predictable, organized aspect to this, and I find it hard to digest how flexible activities like public skating, day camps, adult and senior skate, and parents and tots should be prioritized above organized, regulated sport like this. If it were me, I would put that down after the tournaments and the organized sports. That's my first comment on that. if it was up to me, those are quite flexible activities. A parent and tot skate or a senior and adult skate, those can be flexed fairly easily. But organized sport, especially when you're talking inter-provincial or inter-community sports, they've got much more rigid scheduling to adhere to. So that's my key thing. If it was me, I would reclassify and redefine a couple of things. Under your tournaments, you had the first 60 hours of a tournament not going against allocation. So I would define a high priority tournament as that first 60 hours, and have that clear definition of high priority tournaments and special events. And then from that, I would go with what you guys defined as regular youth sport organizations. But I think we need a definition of what regular means for that, because I couldn't find a definition in the policy of what regular youth or regular adult sport organizations were. So I think that's important to get. And then because we've defined high priority tournaments, any other tournaments, rather than having your limit to just one tournament per user group or 6 per year as the limiting factors, those are kind of handcuffing a number of groups with only 6 tournaments. Why not just call all other tournaments secondary tournaments, and then they can be prioritized lower than the organized sport. And from there, I would take the more flexible programs like the Norfolk County Rec program, push that in underneath that. And then I don't even know what another youth sport organization would be. I was hoping I could get an example of what these other youth and other adult groups might be. But that's really where I sat with the prioritization, and I'll stop there and let somebody else talk.
Thank you, Paul. I can't see very well on my screen. Julie, can you help who is wishing to speak in the council room there?
Chris is wishing to speak, and then Councillor Manager, she is also.
Thank you so much. Chris, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you. Yeah, first of all, I don't understand what you mean by tournaments and special events. Minor hockey, when they book ice, they usually have a set of tournaments that they run. I mean, COVID has screwed everything up the last few years, but they usually have a set, and the tournaments are usually always the same time of year. So I don't understand what the tournaments, special events, I guess maybe special events could be carnival, but I'm assuming when figure skating books ice, carnival is booked into that. Normally, from what I understand, and I've been with my husband's been with minor hockey for 30 some odd years. Minor hockey ice is normally late afternoon into the night during the week and on weekends, and the Norfolk County rec programs are all during the day. So I don't during the week during the day, other than maybe public skating on the weekends. So I don't know. I agree with Paul. I don't know why they would want to come first versus your youth and sport organizations that actually have a huge group that are booking ice. So I agree. I don't like the way this distribution is set up. I don't want to see regular youth sports fall behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki, did you want to comment on that right away or wait for Councillor Van Passen?
Let's wait for
Rishi.
Councillor Vanden Rishi.
Oh, Councillor Rishi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I got you on the phone, but I can't get you. So I apologize. I don't know why it just wouldn't work today. Anyway, I'm just getting into it, so I kind of missed quite a bit there from the original discussion already. But this question is to Nikki. Nikki, why are you choosing to say moving it down from from first to third and third up to first. I really don't know the premise of that. If you could go over that again for me, because I'm not liking it.
No, that's okay. So when we did a lot of review with a lot of our other municipalities, and again, this is why we're bringing this policy to you guys first, is to get your input and see what you think. So many of the municipalities put their own programming first. So it's, if we have needs as the county to offer recreational programming to the large masses, we have the ability to schedule it first and get those hours off the table. And then but our current policy has our recreation programs after all other allocations. So just for an example, this year we've struggled a little bit over the course of the spring summer because there's been a lot of need for ice, and because we've lost that one ice pad, we do still have a large number of ice available, which you will see later when we look at some of the usage stats. But it's the hours that people want that always seem to be the issue. So when we talked about putting some recreational ice programs like our Norfolk County things up ahead of it, I'm not saying that we would book in everything to do with public skates or any of those daytime programming, because those daytime programming, we can put them in at any time. The difficulty is that we need to have some public skate times. We need to have some parent and taught times. We do need to have some adult, recreational skating on weekends and even in evenings, because that's when people are available to use them. And the way our minor hockey groups and our figure skating have been using the ice, because their needs are also increasing, and we recognize that. But we also need to have some of that ice time available to us to be able to program it for those that don't participate in minor hockey or figure skating.
Okay, but why move you from where my hockey and figure skating and the other organized groups were at 1, and the needs of the county were 3? Why that? Why can't you just work into the time schedule the needs of the, if you have that? But you're offering, what I don't understand is you offer public skating on Saturday night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most arenas.
Sometimes, yep, sometimes.
Be in, but your biggest users, I mean, you can't tick off your biggest users. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I don't like the switch of categorization. I don't like the idea that you're moving them to number 3 and 3 up. I don't, because I don't think, I think their need is much more, they need it more than the public, because I think you could squeeze them in. Moms and tots, you can during the day, because mom and tots are home, right. And the if they're homeschooled, you throw that in that time lot during the day. But I just don't want to see our skating and minor hockey, and like you say, and I agree with you, reducing it down to, we've lost one arena already. We haven't got a lot of ice time, but you'll see, I know you're going to tell me there's a lot of ice available, but it's at a different time of the day, right? So
yeah.
But I don't care, through myself personally, I don't think we should be knocking the group down to 3 rather than where they are. So
Okay.
I don't, so.
We'll definitely take all of that into consideration for sure. And we will be communicating all of this with our user groups as well. So everybody's going to get a chance to comment on it. So yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And sorry, and Paul, to answer your question in regards to the definitions, I think there, if you when you read through the package that you were given, one of the comments that I had made on there also said that we do have to define. There's a whole section in there that we do have to define all the different categories, and we need to expand on the definition section because it's missing from this policy.
Can you give me an example of what an other youth group might be? Like
Well,
I just couldn't quite comprehend.
So
between regular
yeah, so basically what that means is our regular youth groups are our own minor hockey groups. So we also have some groups that are coming in from outside of Norfolk County. So they're more of a non-resident, but they're bringing youth groups in. We've got a Brantford team that comes in. We've got teams that are coming in from Norwich. There's also some skill development groups who are starting to rent the ice as well, that are are not our regular, minor hockeys or figure skating groups, that sort of thing. So those other organizations would be considered the other youth.
Okay, I think we'll be able to reattack that issue a little later on the next page. We'll talk about that.
Any more questions on this section?
Councillor Vandendrishi, did you have your hand up?
Right, like I said, I missed the first part. So in reading it, I'm trying to catch up here. When you say other, would you in theory then put other ahead of minor hockey? Like, is other considered ahead, like the number one category you were thinking, or?
No. So the new ice allocation distribution would be what we've got in the current policy, would be changed to be the Norfolk County recreational programs, then tournaments and special events, then the regular youth sport organizations. So those are all our Norfolk County minor hockey, figure skating, junior hockey, and any of the recreational youth groups like sledge hockey, Special Olympics, that kind of thing. They're all those youth groups. And then we would look at our regular adult youth or our regular adult users. So that would be our current existing groups that are always using the ice. And then it would be the other youth sport organizations. So we would put our adults before allowing anybody else from the outside of the county coming in with other, youth organizations, and then our boards of educations, and then the adult and seasonal groups. So other adult and seasonal groups, so new users or groups from outside the county. And then occasional or commercial users. So those are more of your one-time renter and that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Just to give my own comments here, I think with a lot of people kind of disagreeing about the change in priorities, I did notice that throughout the policy, Norfolk County does reserve the right to reschedule things and maybe leaving the original priority list, but keeping in mind that you have that if there is a need to, make sure that there is equitable access to the arena. Not every kid can play hockey or skate. Some of them are just going to these free public skates. So I think the happy medium between that could be making sure that staff does utilize that right that they do reserve in case it becomes an issue that there's not enough public skate time. Okay. Any other?
Good, Madam Chair.
Oh, Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, I think, the exact input that council and staff are looking for, because the way we've done things in the past is no longer feasible. We've decreased, we've got one less ice surface. I think Mr. Anderson brought out a good point. I think if you read through the policy, every group is entitled to one tournament a year. So can we class those, Nikki, as primary tournaments, but then the option of secondary tournaments farther down the list? That I think there needs to be a shift in, like with minor hockey, that, we sort of lost that concept of having early morning practices. I know you're not going to have a game at 7 o'clock in the morning, but can't we shift some more of that practice time for the minor hockey groups into those non-prime hours of the morning and still free up a little bit of that prime time for those county-run programs? We're not going to steal the whole thing, but maybe 1 hour a day out of the prime time hours would go to county-run programs, and get that as a consistent schedule, because those groups need that consistency as well. And yes, the moms and tots, I don't think Nikki's ever thought about shifting them into, a 6 p.m. slot. We've got the mornings, the afternoons, they're going to go there, but there's other groups that see that need to be after work, right? So, maybe we need some more categories here. And, this was, to me, one of the biggest, most important things to get sort of the fundamentals laid out. If you agree with the fundamentals, it's easy to write the rest of the policy. But if we can't get agreement on the fundamental about who gets what and when they get it, we could argue we won't get this policy done this year, right? So I'd like to hear some more of that input, try to keep my mouth shut and listen rather than talk, because my days of carting kids out to arenas have been in a little bit of a lull for the last 10 years, and the oldest grandson is now just about ready. He's up skating once in a while now, so soon I'll be back in the game and I'll be whining just like the rest of you, right?
Yeah.
All righty, did we want to move on to the next page here?
I think Linda's waved her hand again.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see myself very well. It's on the little scare through you, Madam Chair. My point is, though, at the end of the day, we have to run this. This is a business, and but we are here to serve the public, and I understand that. But your user groups that pay big bucks are your minor hockeys, your figure skatings, and those organizations. So, but we also have to make sure that we provide for those people that aren't in organized sport. But that's why I don't want them moved, categorized down, and then we're slipping in items that is, moms and tots no, not except the general taxpayer. So and then we're going to find out that, well, the arenas lose money. Well, we got to make sure we have the payer groups at the top of our priority as well. So
Okay, any other comments on this page? No? Okay.
Okay, so the next section basically is where we start to define some of the different user groups, which still needs a little bit of work. And like I said a few minutes ago, we need to add in a complete definition section into the policy. But this is where it would identify, who falls into the category of the regular user group, who falls into the category of the other user groups. It identifies, this section here says this is where we'd input the names of all the grandfathered tournaments. So those are the tournaments that have been existing forever, and we're going to continue to allow them to operate regardless of how this works.
Paul?
Yeah, on that with respect to the tournaments and grandfathering the tournaments, I think you might have to rework your definition of a grandfathered tournament, because 2 years of COVID has left no tournaments grandfathered.
Yeah, you're right. We could definitely reword it in there so that it removes that COVID years for sure. We could, I think what Haldeman has just approved theirs, and I think they used wording along the lines of, I think they used anything that was 2 years prior to 2020. So anything that was in that 2018, 2019, 2020 era would become one of the grandfathered tournaments.
Right. And this is the area where you talk about the first 60 tournament hours and define them. This is where I would recommend we talk about the priority tournament and then the secondary tournaments.
Yep, I like that.
It would be those after that. That's kind of that opens it up for possibly more than 6 tournaments, which I know was different than policy later on in this document. But if you rank the secondary tournaments appropriately, then it's not a problem, because there'll be a low priority in your priority list. And it should help just offer that one more tool to try and fill these arenas. Over.
Okay.
All right.
So the next section ends up being the hour. Oh, yep.
Sorry, you jumped a little bit too far there. I'm on section 2.2.4.
Okay. Adult users and seasonal clients.
Yeah, there's a section there. If you read the sentence, grandfather status will provide existing clients access to historical ice to all seasonal clients that have had the same hours for 3 or more consecutive years from the current year. That's not really a sentence.
Okay. Yeah, there is still, like, this is still complete draft format, Paul, so we do have a lot of things that need to get fixed still, but yes, I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out what.
What that's actually trying to say?
Yeah, because it seemed like two separate thoughts blended into one non-sentence.
Yeah, okay. We'll take another good look at that. And there, I think there's a little bit more, a better definition that we can actually put in there as well, because it does get into the whole, the issue with the consecutive years and the 2020, 2021 and anything like that. So but there is a lot of definition changes that we do still need to work on.
Right. If you're going to stop at 2.2.5, I just had a couple of questions about that.
Okay.
You refer to a joint use agreement with school boards, providing us with an exchange of facilities free of charge in in the first paragraph, but then on the second paragraph, it says for all bookings, there's a user fee. They're charged an hourly a permit fee. So I was kind of just wondering, as I tried to reconcile those two statements with, is this joint user agreement providing Norfolk with an acceptable return on investment? Are we gaining as much from Norfolk programs at the schools as the schools are gaining from access to the arenas? And is that been considered as to where the school boards are in on the prioritization list?
That's correct. So to answer that question, we have been under the same JUFA agreements for quite some time, and we've actually spoken with the school board because they're in the same boat as well, in wanting to make some changes to it because of user fees and that kind of thing. So yes, we are definitely not in the same level. We are not on a same playing field because we do utilize the schools for a lot of programming. Financial wise, they definitely get the better end of the stick when it comes to the arenas. But that is one of the reasons why we also have moved them down in the allocation process. So based on the joint use agreement, they do get free use between 9 and 4, I believe is the hour. But the permit fee and why that second paragraph came in was because during the user fee bylaw approval, not last year, but the year before, a permit fee was introduced into the user fee bylaw, which has then been given to the school boards as well. So for every hour they book, they don't pay the $120 or the $190 worth of ice. They pay, I think it's $5.25 or something along that line for every hour, just to cover some administrative cost. And that's sort of similar to what the schools had implemented with us a number of years back as well. We pay a bit of a permit fee now instead of getting free use of everything as well. And that because maintenance costs and everything else have gone up. So the JUFA agreements are on our list of things to review with the different school boards, both Grand Erie and the Catholic School Board. So problem is there's only so many hours in a day and so many people. So right now, those agreements are kind of on the back burner, but they are something that we know we do have to come into terms with and revisit and renegotiate with the school boards.
Thanks. Chris, you had hand up?
Yeah, I did, Madam Chair, through you, while we're on in this area, I got some ideas to throw for you guys to think about for me, because again, I'm not the expert on this, but if I remember correctly, minor hockey tends to have a season that's terribly front-loaded. Everybody wants to get on the ice as much as possible, and then you get into the new year, and with playoffs and playdowns, and they use less and less. And is there a way to sit down with those groups when you compare those to like the adult leagues? Maybe start the adult leagues a little bit later in the season, and they would have their ice time sort of gradually built up where they start with a little bit, before Christmas, but get more and more into January, February. Is there room maybe I should be asking Nikki about that as well, that room to sort of readjust schedules that way. And as Paul brought up, the secondary tournaments, to run some of them in January, February, March, when the minor hockey schedules are starting to stabilize a little better. And I know that's one of the worst times because you never know whether you're going to make the next round of playoffs or not. And that's where we end up with a lot of the canceled ice time, because they have to book it just in case they make the next round. But if they get beat out, you know, in the seventh game in overtime and they just about made it, but all of a sudden we got a block of ice next week that we don't need. So is there room, Nikki, to talk to those other groups that we're referring to and sort of talk them into taking more of the ice time later in our seasons?
Absolutely, Councillor Van Passen. Those discussions can always happen. Whether or not anybody jumps on it or takes it into consideration is another story. So we have started to have better dialogue with our user groups, especially our adults, since the issues that we had run into this past year with not having all the ice available to be able to meet everybody's needs, that we will continue to have those conversations with them. But again, it would all depend on our allocation process and what we agree to on that first section on how we're going to divvy up the ice. So if we, all agree that, those other user groups are going to stay at the bottom and the adults are going to be lower down, then we can certainly have those conversations and work through things like that. Our facility booking clerk does a great job in trying to negotiate with all our user groups, and most of our user groups have been very accommodating. So I think there's definitely some room for it.
And the other idea that I got to give credit to Councillor Taylor, we talked about it last year. Maybe we could pick one really nice prime time, like maybe the Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and then auction it off. Because some of the beer league guys just had to have that 7 o'clock on Wednesday night, because that's enough time to play your game of hockey. And the whole concept behind beer league hockey is to be done in time to go have a beer and eat your wings. And they can't do that if they got 11 o'clock ice time. So we should put one up, every arena up for auction. And if they're willing to pay, $200, $250, $275, $300 for that hour, they can have it. And we can roll that money, extra money back into the pot to help subsidize the other groups. So.
All right. Any other comments before we move on to the next page?
Oh, yeah, sorry, paragraph 2.2.6.
Okay.
I noted earlier on that we talk about tournaments and we acknowledge the value of the revenue that they bring to the groups that the organized groups who hold the tournaments. And then in the same policy here, we have commercial users knocked down to the bottom because they're for profit, and revenue and for profit are kind of the same thing. And yet we put them at the two ends of the scale, and something just didn't really sit in my logical brain. It didn't say that organized groups can make a great profit and we'll high prioritize that, and then we'll low prioritize anybody who wants to make a profit but isn't an organized group. So I don't know. I didn't know what to do with that. But what is the fundamental concern over, in prioritizing these groups? Is it over their profit? Well, we just said tournaments were the number one thing. So, now, well, not for you, but for me, I rank tournaments up at number one. But now we're saying these other groups, we got to really watch what kind of money they're making. So I just found this a little hard to swallow. I didn't know what to do with it. Over.
Vicky?
Thanks, Kate. So to try to explain that, Paul, the commercial users unfortunately are at the bottom, and the reason that is because we don't have enough ice time for our minor groups and our figure skating now. So if we were to allow our commercial users, well, yes, they do bring in more money. They pay us more money for the ice because they're considered prime, general users that aren't subsidized in any way. but we need that ice time to be able to ensure that we've given our minor groups all the ice that they need. So it's kind of like what we need to really focus on is figuring out how we're going to allocate to those minor groups, the figure skating, the minor hockey, the ones that need those lots of hours, and how we're going to get them, whether it's, and we'll get to that in the next section of the policy here, but as to whether or not we can convince them and force them basically to use 5 or 10% of that non-desirable ice time in the non-prime. So whether it's the early mornings or, whether it's the, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock or 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock time period, instead of giving them all that prime time evenings and the weekend times that they want. And if we can do that, then it does help to free up some of that time that we can then give to some of these commercial users or to the ones that are going to bring us in a little bit more money.
Right.
So
I completely get it. I completely get it. I'm all about making sure the organized sports get their first crack at as much ice time as the organized sports need. That's my my incoming belief here. But this whole paragraph here talks about profit, and it just the flavor of the paragraph is like, oh well, these guys are out to make profit, therefore we're going to prioritize them low. And that just invites, a contested argument instead of simply saying, no, organized groups are going to be the first to get their kick at the hours, and then all of the other groups that are more flexible, or they've got one-time only things, so they're not going to be as reliable a customer for Norfolk County. They should get the lower end of this, and then you could just say these are occasional users, and you don't have to include anything about their profit making or their whatever they're doing, because right now I don't know whether a what's that figure skating shows that travel around. I don't know whether they would be classed as a special event or an occasional commercial user, and how would you prioritize it then? I don't know. I can't tell based on what you're talking about, because they're for profit, so they could be down at this paragraph, or they could be a special event and be the number one. I don't know.
So what I'm hearing then is better definitions is probably going to clear some of this up.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yep.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Graham Passon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'm going to have to throw a little bit of context onto that whole discussion. Arenas lose money. We concede that. We as council concede that. It's just a matter of becoming what is the acceptable level of loss. Now, the last full season we had, if I remember the numbers correctly, we collected $1 for every $3 it took in operational costs. And then you should probably throw another $1 on there for capital costs. So we're collecting 25 cents on the dollar. So if 10 guys are out there playing a pickup game of hockey, we're actually paying each and every one of them $20 to go play hockey. That's an unacceptable level of loss. We need to do something to reduce that level of loss. It's never going to go away completely. And like one way to fix that is to charge more, which our minor hockey and kids groups can't afford. And there are certain societal benefits that when you give kids something to do and get them healthier and get that team spirit in them, they're a lot less cost to society later on. Even the adult skates and the free skating, get people out there exercising, there's less cost to society from the medical side. We understand all of those things, but to say one of the skating shows that's going to bring in a group of professional skaters just for entertainment, we shouldn't subsidize that at all. So we should actually be charging them about $600 an hour to rent the ice, because that's what it actually costs us. And, you know, again, everything in this game here is about balancing the cost to the taxpayer and the benefits we get from it and the needs that we have and the wants that we have. So again, that's a whole, you know, a for-profit business that wants to rent the ice in Waterford for the weekend to put on a show that they're going to charge $20 admission for everybody to watch them skate. They should pay the full price of it, and that's going to be $500 or $600 range. Now, the other option of that, I think, is what I think Nikki's talked about or hinted at a lot, is how many hours a day do those arenas sit empty? And if we can get some revenue coming in on those non-peak hours, and you know, I've talked before about more practice times in the mornings and things like that, if we could get better use of the arenas altogether, then we can again keep those losses on the taxpayer at an acceptable level. So, you know, just throwing all that stuff out there that we're all on the same page at one point, saying, yes, we're going to lose money, but we want to limit that as best we can and still provide the best service we can. And somewhere there's a balance. I don't know where it is. That's why we got the experts of this committee to give us the advice. So I will leave it at that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, sorry, just to, Nikki, I know you've rolled down to 2.3, but in paragraph 2.2.7, I just wanted to say it defines individual residency requirements here, but we don't really talk about an organizational residency. And I think that's what you were kind of getting at with your definition of regular versus other groups. And perhaps regular should just be Norfolk organizations. Mm-hmm. And then you can define what a Norfolk organization is as a being, I don't know, let's say 50% plus one or whatever. You know, that would help in that section there too.
Yeah, for sure.
Over.
Okay, so this next section is one of the big pieces that needs to be figured out and decided on. And again, we will be having some discussions with our user groups to get their feel. We've started having some preliminary discussions with figure skating on, you know, something that would work for them as well. And then we will be also reaching out to our minor hockey groups. So there's two different options here, and on what's currently happening is basically the user group submits how many hours they need, and we try to work it into the schedule, and nobody questions, you know, unless we really struggle, and then we will work with the groups to try to cut back on one and to be able to give everybody the same, but there's nothing that's telling us exactly how we can do that. So these two options here are two of the most popular ones that are used by municipalities. And one is the first one, which just talks about the number of registrations. And if there's 1,000 registrants and 600 of them are minor hockey and 300 are girls and 100 is skating clubs, then the percentage of ice available is divvied up between those three. I don't really like that one too much, but it's an easy one to do. The groups just have to give us the registration numbers from the previous year, and we can figure out the allocation hours. The second one is a little more in depth, but it's a little more fair. And the second option is more or less it's based on the amount of programs, the amount of teams, the level of sport. So like your rep hockey would be given, you know, a little more per team per week. Your house league hockey would be a little less hours per week. And figure skating would be based on the standards for the amount of program participants in each category versus and a combination of, you know, this program that they run requires, you know, 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week based on Skate Canada standards. So that one takes a little bit more time to do, but once we've established it, I believe would be the most fair for our municipality. Given the fact that we now have Norfolk Minor Hockey, which is the travel hockey, which is the rep hockey, and then we also have the house league hockey, and then we also have Delhi and Langton, who both have travel hockey and house league hockey. So We've got a lot going on in the facilities, and the fight between, well, we've got so many more players and we want to give them 3 hours instead of, only 2, is really starting to cut into the time that we can provide for some of our adult users as well.
Paul?
Yeah, I can't comment much on the section 2.3 because, like I said earlier, I've been on the ice in Langton once, and that's my only Norfolk experience. So I'm waiting for a subject matter expert to weigh in on the allocation formula. But what I did notice on this is that you refer to prime time, and we haven't yet defined it. I would say that you could pull paragraph 3.5 that defines what prime ice time is ahead of this, so that you're working from clear definitions.
Absolutely.
Over.
Thank you. I agree with you, Nikki. I think if user groups preferred the first option, I just wonder, would that be something that would be reevaluated annually?
Yeah, it would be based on every year they'd have to submit the registration numbers from the previous year, because they can change. They can fluctuate greatly, especially now. So yes, we would have to reevaluate it each year. The difficulty with that first type of allocation process would be, it's not as fair for the figure skating clubs because they require a different use of ice. So it really would be not in favor of them.
Yeah, I do prefer option 2 as well. Any other input?
I think Councillor Vanden Driesch's waving.
Oh,
Thank you for noticing, Nikki. There's no way of pushing this thing to put my hand up on this phone. Find that, so I can only wave to you. I like either or. We've been, through you, Madam Chair, we've been using traditionally the 2.3 method, right? The new method that you're coming up with. I think this is a case of the user groups having to figure out what they're doing. I know you kind of differentiated. You said the Norfolk hockey, but that's not all working as perfect as you think it is. And then you mentioned Delhi and Langton. So as far as the rep hockey goes, you might get surprised again, because I guess it's not working out as perfect for them as you think it is. So you're going to have some real good discussion coming up pretty soon.
Okay.
But I do like, I don't want the girls to be short shifted or short shafted, whatever you want to use the term, because I'd like to see more girls hockey come in, and I don't know how we can do that with this ice. But I do agree that maybe taking a look at what you're going to call prime time is going to be important. When you have something like Norfolk hockey and they're using the arenas, the 3 arenas between Waterford, Simcoe, and Dover, there's an area there as well where they can, because they're clustered, that those can come out and do an early practice. Because years ago, when we had rep hockey coming out of our ear, my boys often did a 6 o'clock practice in the morning. So it's not an uncommon thing, but use it where you can. And if they are considered at a higher level or category, such as a AAA or whatever, they're accustomed to doing early morning practices from every other community. So you might have an option there as well. But like I say, it's not working out as perfect as you think yet. So, but I would leave it up to the professionals that are the ones that are user groups to hash this out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But way towards the girls, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, to you. I think one of the issues we found with the allocation or distribution is the different leagues, and I think figure skating is one as well, where it's the blocks. They need blocks of ice time. They can't just have an hour here, an hour there. The refereeing is costing a lot more, so the higher level you go, those referees want to do at least 2 games back to back. The certain leagues and playoff games, you need more than the hour. So it's not just allocations of hours, it's those blocks that it doesn't fit. You can't give, if you got 6 hours of prime time ice available, you can't give 2 4-hour blocks to 2 different groups. It just, at least my math doesn't work that way. So that's one more complicating factor. And again, Councilor Van touched on it there, that I remember these 6 o'clock in the morning practices as well. And I remember having to drive not to Dover, you went to Simcoe sometimes, you went to Waterford sometimes for those 6 o'clock practices to get the kids on the ice. Your games were always at your home arena, but that doesn't mean you get to practice and use up primetime ice for a practice when there's other groups that would like to use that ice as well. So again, one more thing to throw into the jumbo mix, and I don't know how you ever figured it out in the first place, but do it like I do with my kid, just say no to everything, and then it's easier to say yes to one thing later, right?
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to move on. So seasonal commitment. So this is a section that this first sentence is a new sentence into the policy. Where it talks about all youth organizations and seasonal users are required to commit to the entire season or risk losing their ice time to other user groups that will commit to the entire season. And the reason that got put in is more or less because we've got a number of groups who, they'll do their first 6 weeks and then they want to do their next 6 weeks. And it kind of puts a really it handcuffs our facility booking clerk because she can't commit to everybody else's organization until we have everybody's ice allocation requests and that we can allocate the ice all at the same time. So this would help assist us in working with those groups to make sure that they're getting their whole requests in at one time as opposed to staggered requests. And then the next section just talks about the fall and winter versus spring and summer seasons.
Oh, Paul had his hand up here, Nikki.
Yep. You're on mute, Paul.
Thank you. I turned my mute off for the very first time in the whole meeting, and that's what happens. I was just about to say, or I was trying to say that if in your definition you discriminated between full season organizations and those organizations that might be Norfolk but partial season organizations, you could then have a prioritization method that places them slightly lower than the full season committed people, and I think that might help your booking clerk. The other thing I wanted to mention on this particular paragraph is that the Langton Arena is called out in specifically, and perhaps in para 1.1 back at the beginning, you could just say what arenas this policy covers, because again, I don't want to keep telling you all about what a great skater I am, but I only know of the one arena that I've been on. So, if we spell it all out, then, it's clear what arenas we're talking about. And to be honest, I don't even know. We've been talking for over an hour here, and several times we come up on the ice time pressures. And, I think Councillor Van Passen is going to both agree and wince. Perhaps what are the odds of ever reopening the rec center ice to alleviate some of those pressures? Is that an option ever? Should it be revisited, or do we have to wait until we can get a Hub 2.0 type effort going here to alleviate these ice time pressures? Over.
You want an answer to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can just absolutely see no scenario where we're going to put ice back into that rec center. Statistically, we were running 6 arenas at the best arena we had was less than 60% use of prime time hours. So mathematically, with 5 arenas, you still only have to do 75% use of prime time hours to use the same number of hours that we used before without that pad. And I could never see, I think the official grand opening of the senior center is coming up on June the 18th. And I can never see a scenario where we're gonna put ice back into that building. Now, Hub 2.0, a quad pad somewhere in Bill's Corners, which is the geographic center of Norfolk, and it's also in Ward 4. I can see those options happening before I can see ice back in the rec center. But that is our problem. We have too many facilities that cost too much money to run, and we're going to balance that with the availability to the groups and to our youth. But I said, I can't see, it's not a matter of the lack of ice, it's the matter of scheduling it, but everybody wants the same blocks. So maybe it is going to be a little bit of hardball sitting down. No, you're not going to get practice times for Port Dover minor hockey in the prime time hours. You're going to get more practice times in the mornings, or you'll get practice times in the Langton Arena, because I know I made this statement a couple of years ago when this whole item came up, and I went and measured it just to be sure, because do you know it's just as far to drive from Dover to Langton as it is to drive from Langton to Dover? Because they talked about having kids from Langton could go play hockey somewhere else and we could close that arena. I said, no, it's the exact same distance, so why can't the kids from Dover drive there or Waterford drive there? And you know, if it takes that, and I know when my kids played hockey, they didn't care how long the drive was to get there, as long as they got on the ice and got to play hockey, right? So they would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be in a tournament at 6 o'clock in Elmer. That didn't bother them at all. Might have bothered mom and dad, but didn't bother the kids any. But that is more of the balance, is getting the different groups. There is the time out there on the ice. There's more than enough. We still have empty hours in prime time that we're not using. And it's just a matter of getting agreement, like I said before, about front loading a bit more on minor hockey and back loading maybe the commercial leagues and the beer leagues. You know, are those options available? I'm sure we can do it, but it's going to take commitment from all the groups, all willing to achieve the same goal, not just the me attitude.
Yeah.
Fully agree. Yeah, I just wanted to add my input before we move on about the 2.4. I totally agree. I think that's a great addition, and hopefully that helps with booking. And then about the prime versus non-prime ice, I know there's been a debate over what's considered prime ice time. And I'm wondering, has it been a consideration to have separate prime ice times for like the minor, like the kids that are not going to be wanting to play till 11 o'clock at night on a school night versus the adults? And if that could work for, I think it said a 9:30 cutoff, not booking the adults until after 9:30. Maybe if we just clean that up to 9 and say that the youth prime hours go to 9 and the adults go to 11. Paul?
Yeah, I was, when I read this, it's almost like you're trying to argue your prioritization schedule needs amending here. And my argument would be that prime hours don't need a discussion of youth versus adult. That was carried out in the prioritization schedule already. So all you really have to do in this paragraph is say all organizations at the same priority level will, regardless of gender orientation, level of competitiveness, et cetera, shall receive equal treatment during the priority times. You don't have to turn it into a youth versus geezer argument here. Over.
Nikki, go ahead.
Okay. So the prime and the non-prime, the whole purpose of the prime and non-prime basically are for user fees more so than scheduling the ice. So our prime hours in the past used to be identified from 4 till 11. Monday to Friday, and all hours on weekends were always considered all prime hours. The non-prime, so when we were struggling with getting, our adults to move to later hours or to try to change some stuff around, we did do some tweaking with the prime and non-prime a number of years ago, and shortened it up to 5 to 10 p.m. basically for prime hours, Monday to Friday. And that was because we were really trying to get those minor groups or those other groups, adult groups or anybody, to use that 3 till 5 o'clock time period at a cheaper rate so that we could actually get them in there and free up some of the primetime hours. But it really hasn't helped us in any real positive way. So, I mean, we could honestly always go back to our prime hours of being 4 till 10 p.m. or 4 till 11 or 5 to 11. We can change these no matter what, depending on what everybody seems to think is the best. They are all over the map in other municipalities. Most are from that 5 to 11 o'clock. Some do still stick with the 4 to 11. But again, it all depends on what you think on how we can get people utilizing this ice. And if we get them using it at a cheaper rate, then if we're filling the ice, regardless if it's a little cheaper or not, we're making more money. So this is an area of discussion that I'm more than happy to have a discussion with you on.
Any other input, guys?
And I could make a comment on that last statement. We don't make more money, we lose less.
Okay.
If you look at it realistically from a business model, and maybe Paul could help me out with this, like what we would need to do is first sit down, talk to our unions, and instead of an 8-hour day, go to a 12-hour work day. And then from that point, we're only going to open the arenas and, let's pick it up. We're going to be open from 12 noon until 12 midnight. Or actually 12:30 till 11:30, and that's a half hour ahead for staff to get ready, a half hour after they're closed to get them out. And we're only going to be open 12 hours a day, and that's the only ice we have, and this is how much it costs. And we do that for 7 days a week, and we work out the schedule on 12-hour shifts, and that's it from a business model. But that doesn't fit. It's sort of like saying I'm going to open a restaurant, but I'm going to close between 12 and 1 because that's when I go eat my lunch, right? You're not going to stay in business long. But, again, where's that balance between a business model, like how many days do we have where we've got seniors 1 hour skate at 12, and then we've got the figure skaters on the ice at 4:30, but we still have staff walking around that whole time in between because we can't send them home, and they're on their salary that they're earning, but there's nobody on the ice to do anything for, and that's one of the reasons why we lose more money. So if we're going to pay them to be there, we might have somebody skating around using the ice that's paying us something back, at least get those hourly wages back, right? So yeah, let's fill it up 24 hours a day. We could probably get close to breaking even on something, but that's a long way down the road.
Who can use it during the day?
There used to be a good league in Dover that was Stucco workers, right?
Then maybe we need to market.
Yeah, they used to come and play at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Market daytime ice because kids can't use it, minor sports can't use it. People work, go to school.
Yeah.
I get it, but then maybe we need to focus on marketing midweek hours to different groups and organizations. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Nikki, you ready to keep going?
All right. Yep. So the next one is block booking. It just talks about that we won't book ice anything less than 1 hour, and that's just a standard clause in most municipal allocation policies. And then we get into conflict resolution. So this is just a method outlined so that everybody is all on the same page as to what will happen if there are groups that are wanting the exact same ice time and they're not getting it, or there's any type of conflict, that our the allocation process first, the historical allocations. If there's still conflict, the facility booking clerk tries to work with the groups that are involved, and in most instances come to a great conclusion. If it doesn't, then it would escalate to myself, and then from there it would escalate to the GM, and then on to council at that point in time.
Yeah, I just had a comment about that section, two short comments, actually.
Mhm.
I think the sports requirements of the governing bodies should be a high priority on that conflict resolution tab, and that goes back to my feeling that organized sport is very, very important.
Mhm.
And then I had another question about the final bullet there. It says other applicable Norfolk County policies. This being a policy, can we spell out what other policies this policy is referring to?
We could.
Okay, over.
Okay.
Carrie.
And then the next section is just talking about the processing and management of tournaments and special events, which is still just a standard clause that we had previously. This is where it talks about the maximum of the 6 tournaments. And that's based on our grandfather tournaments at that time. But we can take another look at that too, based on comments that you've made previously, Paul.
Yeah, I just see that as unnecessarily limiting your opportunity to host tournaments on non-primetime hours or
Mhm.
other ways to make some revenue off of this. So I would just going to recommend striking that that last sentence right off of that particular paragraph.
Yep. And then the control of ice distribution. Again, this is just kind of a policy statement, just talking about that Norfolk County has the right to control the ice distribution, and it basically is just outlining that what the county says is final, and that the facility booking clerk works on behalf of the county to book the ice. And this second paragraph here, this is something that was lacking from our old policy, in the fact that it never identified that people who are booking contracts or anything must be at least 18 years of age, and that is because so that they can sign a legal contract. So if in some cases we've had 15, 16-year-olds calling and wanting to book ice. Well, we can't. We need their parent to come and at least call and book it and sign the contract. So we thought it needs to be part of the agreement, and so it was, or part of the policy, sorry, and so we've implemented it into it. And then it also talks about if there is open ice, we need to have a minimum of 4 consecutive hours if we've got to bring in extra staff. So that would be more so in the summer times that would happen, where if we've got staff that are working out in the parks and we've got somebody that wants to come in and book the ice, if they're booking it in blocks of 4 hours, then we can bring in staff to be able to do that.
Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a question for Nikki. Have we gotten technology far enough that I can't use myself as an example, that my son could just get on his iPhone, see if there's a free hour of ice on Sunday morning, book it, pay it with PayPal or whatever credit card, and not have to do anything beyond that?
We're really close, Councillor Van Passen. So the new software that we're using, we did implement, and we have opened up the public facing portal. So it opened in December of 2021. We did process 43 bookings between December and the end of March through that portal. The only thing is yet they can go in, they can book it, they can see what's available, they can book it, they can fill out the contract, they can sign the contract, they can pay the contract. The only thing at the time was the insurance piece was still a bit lacking. And so our facility booking clerk had to just approve it, and they got an email saying that it was approved, but at the same time, then they would have to pay the additional insurance cost. So we've been working with the system, and we have now got the insurance piece added right into it as well. So we can now do pretty much the whole thing. It's just a matter of, it still needs that formal approval from the facility booking clerk, or we've actually even got our customer service staff at the rec center who are watching them on weekends or on holiday times when the facility booking clerk may not be in the office.
Thank you, Paul, and then Councillor Van Andrieschie.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to subparagraph 4 of that paragraph 4. It just says multi-purpose meeting rooms and arenas will only be available when the facility is open for ice or floor rentals. Does that really belong in the ice allocation policy, or does that go in the other recreational facilities policy? That was my question about that. And then in terms of the last paragraph there, I think it talks about how it's closed on all statutory holidays except Family Day. Being a federal public employee, I was sitting there wondering, is this Ontario holidays, federal holidays, or both? And I just thought, gee, it'd be nice to just list the ones that you're not going to be open on. Or better yet, is there not a business case to offer the arenas on stat holidays on a cost recovery type basis for the additional labor it's going to incur? And then end your 4-hour blocks, of course. And then perhaps, we're going to generate that little bit extra revenue on those 3-day weekends when there's ice on the floor. Over.
Linda?
Yeah, just to make a quick, through you, Madam Chair, a quick comment on that, Paul. I don't think that they're going to be prepared to pay what it's going to cost. If we listen to Councillor Van Passen, it sounds like it's $500 or $600 an hour. So I don't think that'll work. But bringing in staff on, it's their holiday too, so we have to be a little bit cautious there. My issue with the new portal and the new system is that sounds great for all those who can handle that. And that's wonderful. But why is it we don't look at what we used to do in the old days? There's always staff at the arenas. They all have computers, it seems to be there. Why is it that they can't just go ahead and do that for an individual who comes in with a bunch of kids or want to play shimmy hockey or whatever, that they could be able to do it right there at the arenas? Wouldn't that help? And I mean, because like if you come in around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, the kids had appointments and then whatever, and then you drag them back to the arena, they got practice maybe at 5 or something, but they could get on the ice at 4 if mom pays or whatever, and they could just book it there. Is there any thought to letting staff do that, or is that going to be more difficult, or what are your thoughts on that, Nikki?
Through you, Kate. Councillor Van Andrieschie, you're in my head. You're reading everything that's in there. So yes, that has been thought about, and yes, that is in the works. This new system is a lot easier for all staff to be able to manipulate. It's just taken a little while for everybody to get comfortable with it, because the problem is if you don't use it, you lose it. So staff have been trained. We're working on them right now with the public skates more so at the moment, because we have to have everybody who's registered, they have to be in the system and they have to go through, and we've been tracking all the public skating, and they're all paying that way. So the arenas are slowly getting used to using that whole system of booking people in and attending them. And then we're moving into the ability for the staff at the rinks just to be able to do it. So they have done some of it already. Waterford is doing a great job. So we kind of been using Waterford as a little bit more of a pilot project, and using the staff there just to make sure that everybody it's working properly. But there's all the other option, in which a lot of the arenas have been doing too, is now that our customer service clerk is open at the rec center on more hours, 7 days a week again. If there is somebody that's been coming into the arena, they've just been calling them, and they've been doing it right on the spot as well. So it has happened. It's just we want to move to the point where the staff just do it themselves at the rinks. One of the issues, and as long as we can implement with no cash. That was something that was taken out of the ranks a number of years ago, was the ability for the arenas to take cash. I'm not so sure it's a huge issue or not, but it's something that we are looking at, because with the new system, everything can be done by credit card, but not everybody has a credit card, and somebody wants to pay cash, they should be able to pay cash.
That's right.
So we are looking at a number of things, but again, now we've got that issue where it's the ops staff versus the rec staff, and now we've got to work with those teams. So it's not the same department anymore. So we've got to work with those teams to be able to get everybody on board. But that is definitely our goal.
Okay, good. We just want to make it easier access for everybody. That makes more money.
Yeah.
You don't want to hinder anything to happen at those arenas, because we need them. All right. Okay, that's good. I was going to hold something. Okay.
All right, want to keep going, Nikki?
Okay, so transferring ice, ice trade sublease, it's basically just saying that the groups do not have the ability to sublet their ice. So it's, again, because of risk management and everything along that line. It's just saying the county is the only one that has the ability to sell the ice. So
Paul, did you have a comment on or question on that?
Yeah, I noticed that the policy has done a little 180 there based on the redlining, and that's fine. But I'm just wondering if perhaps the ice exchanges and transfers couldn't simply be made with requiring coordination through the facility booking clerk, so that if the hockey team and the figure skaters come up with a cunning plan, they just have to approach the facility booking clerk and just have it in there. And that could all be done via email then, rather than having the facility booking clerk deal with two separate groups at two separate times. That was my only comment there. Over.
Thanks, Paul. Okay.
Councillor Vanderdrishi.
I'm going to express the same thought. Lots of times in arenas, especially in Langton, the cancel ice, but yet the skaters could have taken that ice. And what there's the ability there that they could work something out, because even at the last minute, because I think it would be great to see it used rather than not used. So,
Yep.
Comment. Thank you.
Paul?
Sorry, that's a latent hand. I'll wait until you introduce para 4.2 before putting it back up.
All right.
Okay, so contract cancellations and refunds. This is another section that is one of the key ones where we're trying to get away from that 72 hours notice. So in the current policy, like I had mentioned in the beginning, 72 hours notice, anybody can cancel, full refund, the whole 9 yards. That 72 hours notice does not give us enough time to market that ice and resell it, or be able to reach out to your organizations even. And it makes it even more difficult if it's a Friday versus a Monday, because if we don't have facility booking clerks that work on the weekends. So basically, this is just saying, so with tournaments and special events, you're looking at a minimum of 30 days notice. Reason being is because that's a lot of ice time. So for a whole weekend, if all of a sudden that whole weekend is given up, that's a lot of ice that we've got to try to resell. Youth organizations and seasonal clients, regular season, we're asking for 7 days notice. Playoff season, we do ask for, we're only saying a minimum of 24. Again, I mean, we're trying to work with the groups on that one, because sometimes they don't even know that they're not going to be utilizing or continuing on throughout the playoffs. It could happen one night and they're gone. I don't see any reason why the groups can't still use the ice for a few days afterwards. I'm sure the kids would still love to, but it has happened that they just want to turn it back and get rid of it. So that playoff season one, I'm still not comfortable with 24 hours, but would love to hear your opinions. And then the occasional and commercial users, we're asking for 7 days notice. And that's it for that section.
Paul, go ahead.
I'm waiting for some subject matter expert input into the viability of the cancellation times. So I've got no comment on that. But in the second sentence up there, it says contracts must be signed and returned to the facility booking clerk by the date specified by the facility booking clerk. And as policy, I would say that the policy should try and govern both the facility booking clerk and the user group. So there should be some time frame specified in that, or you know, it's got to govern the facility booking clerk's activities as well.
Good point.
Any other comment? Oh, Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Nikki. Have you ever looked at a sliding scale kind of thing on cancellations? You know, possibly 5 business days, you get a full refund. 4 days, it's 80%, 3, 60, something that way. And maybe the playoff one, you know, 24 hours. That's too tight in my mind. I don't think there's any playoffs where you don't know at least 48 hours ahead, because the last game there's usually a day in between. So if you lost out, and so like I wouldn't fuss too much about that one, but just in general terms, maybe put it at 5 business days and then a sliding scale on the amount of refund you're going to get. And maybe we could at the same time, when new people use your new phone app to book the ice, we could have a sliding scale on that as well. And, you know, it gets cheaper the closer it gets to the, like maybe 5 days out, you book it on your phone, it's full price, and then it's only 80%, and it's only 60. So if one group canceled and another group booked it, you would end up with 100% of your money back for that ice as long as somebody uses it.
Okay, does anyone else have any input?
Councillor Vandendry, she's waving.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
My apologies. I'll have to get my computer working. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm okay with it. I don't know what the sliding scale to re-rent ice, but anyway, it might work if getting down to the hours rather than the day. But as far as that, you have to think about issues that had happened this year. Say, for instance, we had COVID, and all of a sudden a team, there's 6 or 8 of them, that team cannot play hockey. It should be, and they were accommodating, and I think maybe that should be left at the discretion of the facilities department, but that can happen. If all of a sudden you have some sort of like this year, so we have to maybe watch for that in the next year. I think things are clearing up quite nicely, but all of a sudden you'll get a team. I know it happened. My one son's girls rep hockey was going to Toronto. All of a sudden, bang! And I mean, it hit. There was 6 or 8 of them that were out because of COVID, and they were allowed to get their money back out of the tournament. So I think we have to look at that too. I think it has to be under your discretion. I think, Nikki, under the department for some of that as well.
Okay, good points.
Yeah, Nikki, I was gonna mention that as well, is that I want to make sure that they're not, like, the county isn't legally obligated to impose cancellation fees if the facilities booking clerk might say, okay, based on compassionate reasons, based on the situation. I think they do need to have some discretion. And I do like Councillor Van Passen's suggestion of the sliding scale of, you know, depending on how far past the cutoff they cancel versus, you know, when the time was for. And maybe, you know, you a warning the first time, waive the first cancellation fee, and then it's set at, say, you know, depending on how close they cancel to. I like that idea as well. Yeah, that's it. If you want to carry on.
All right. And then the next one is just covering contract cancellations by Norfolk County. So that talks about emergencies, whether we have, you know, equipment failures or hydro issues or anything along that line, that we can cancel ice at any time, given proper notice. And that in that case, and I think it needs to be identified. If it's not identified in here somewhere, that it would say that they would get, yeah, it does. The last sentence says postponed or rescheduling cannot be mutually coordinated. The contract holder affected will receive a full refund or credit for the time owing. So if we canceled, they obviously wouldn't be penalized for that.
Oh,
The second sentence is incomplete. It just ends with the word this only.
Somebody must have had a thought and didn't finish it, obviously. So yes, definitely we need to finish that one. Yes, you makes a really good point, Paul.
Sorry, Nikki, another thing I noticed in the side notes in the comments about the cancellation policy, how other municipalities usually ask for 14 days,
Yeah.
where we're saying 7, maybe throw around the happy medium of 10. Linda, you shaking your head there? No?
No.
Okay.
If I may explain some of that, if you look at the other municipalities, it's because of their population base. We don't have big population base, as well as we are very diverse and very spread out. So at the end of the day, if you're making it tougher and something happens and it just doesn't work. We can't get these teams together or get another team in or minor. It just doesn't work. So I think leaving it at the amount of days that you have there, Nikki, is quite sufficient for me. And you would be having that discussion with the organization as well. So you'll hear from them as well if you start going too far. 14 days. Yeah. We're just not Tilsonburg. Our density isn't there.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
Okay, so unused ice time just talks about that if a group doesn't use their ice or constantly have no shows, we have the ability to take that ice back away from their contract. And that, trust me, that does happen. We have a few minor hockey groups who constantly do not show for their ice time. I know they're paying for it, but we've got other groups that have wanted it in the past. So we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to take that away. Ice rental fees and payment terms just talks about the groups will be paying in the 1 month prior to so the way that our contracts work, and it has worked wonderfully this year. So in the past, the user groups used to always be billed the month after they used the ice. They are now all paying a month prior. And with this new facility booking system, they actually get notifications that their payment is due. It's been working wonderfully. Nobody wants to pay interest because in our old system, it was a manual calculation for interest. And a lot of times there wasn't the administrative staff to be able to go in and do it. This new system, the interest charges automatically apply. And we have had amazing success with all our user groups in getting payments in on time and properly. So that's been a nice change. So this just basically outlines, if they don't pay, it's the 1.25% per month or 14% per annum. Talks about rate increases in the user fee bylaw come into effect May 1st of each year. So we implement them prior to the spring summer ice. So the higher rates will always get charged for the spring summer, and then they follow suit for the rest of the year. The payment schedules are outlined on all of the rental agreements. So all groups, whether they are a regular user or a one-time user, it identifies them clearly as to how much they owe and when they owe it. And it also talks about anybody with an outstanding balance will not be allocated their ice time until their balance is paid in full. And if they have an outstanding balance, they may not be allowed entry onto the ice unless they've made agreements or some form of payment plan.
Okay, Paul?
My only comment reading the previous month comment or payment terms was that, is it legal and ethical to charge a late fee before the service was rendered? Let's say somebody has to pay now on 1 April for an ice rental on 15 May, and as of 1 May, they're being charged a late charge, and you haven't rendered the service yet. Is that legal or ethical?
Through you, Madam Chair. Paul, the way it actually works, and maybe I'd have to go back and read it again exactly how it's written in here, but the way it actually works is that, so if it's due on April 30th, it's for ice time booked in the month of May. The interest doesn't start to apply until 30 days after the due date. So it wouldn't apply until the end of May.
Okay, that's fair. No
I
problem.
could make the comment, Madam Chair, Bell Canada does it that way. You're always prepaying for the month of service you're going to get, and if you don't pay that, they charge you interest next month, but that's the same category, right? You're paying on the 30th of April for May's services, and the interest would be charged on the 1st of June if you didn't pay.
Okay, moving forward.
And then we get into just the general ice maintenance or ice management. So it talks about ice use and flood schedules, that there would be a flood between each different user group, sometimes arena or sometimes minor hockey groups, depending on the age level and whether it's playoffs or not. Sometimes they ask for an ice or a flood halfway through or between the second and third periods. And so this outlines, what's acceptable and what's not. The groups will work with the arena staff to be able to incorporate those special floods. And then we go into group representation, and it talks about not having more than 2 representatives from each organization to deal with the facility booking clerk. That way it keeps things clean. We don't have a lot of people calling and trying to book, because sometimes there used to be, each coach wanted to call instead of go through the ice scheduler. So this just clearly identifies that there's 2 reps. We've been working with that system for quite some time, and everybody seems to be good with it. And then 5.3 is ice safety. Just talks about the safety rules where, nobody's allowed on the ice surface until the Zamboni is off the ice and all the doors are shut. Talks about if they disobey it, then they could lose their ice time. 5.4 talks about Curfew Ice, which is just that if a group has an hour booked and that game, and if they're playing a game and that game got delayed because of an injury or something, we can curfew that ice. If there's a group afterwards, we can curfew that ice so that adult team or that other team doesn't lose their ice time as well. And then we talk about instructional programs and public skate cancellations.
Paul, you have a
sorry.
question?
Yeah, just on para 5.4, the second sentence is not a sentence.
Okay. Thank you. I will take a look at that one. Oh, sorry, Councillor Vander Drachy.
Thank you, through you. This Curfew Ice is, I've never heard of that, whether it's a rep game or a playoff. I've been a timekeeper for a lot of years, and I never ever curfewed a rep game or a playoff game.
Through you, Madam Chair, most of the time the rep teams, when they book their ice time, they actually book extra hours. Yeah, so that they don't run into that issue.
Okay, get it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Talks about opening arenas outside of standard hours of operation. This just talks about the applicant agreeing to pay for the full operational costs. So that would be what Councillor Van Passen talked about the $500 or $600. We've never had that asked for yet, but we wanted to have something in the policy to make sure it was there and clear. And then it just gets into the general administration pieces where it talks about the forms, insurance requirements, and alcohol permits, special occasion permits. And then the responsibilities of the director and the facility booking clerk, and consequences if people don't follow the ice allocation policy.
Okay, Paul, do you have your hand up?
You're on mute, Paul.
Could we just jump back to para 5.5 for a second?
We can.
this talks about to minimize user frustration and dissatisfaction and related negative impacts. So this kind of goes back to the whole organized sport versus the recreational sport argument. But in my view, again, user frustration and dissatisfaction against non-organized activities should be less of a concern than user frustration and dissatisfaction amongst the organized activities. In terms of the prioritization right at the beginning of our discussion here. So I really think the organized activities, people join these because they're organized and therefore reliable activities. In terms of para 5.6, if you'll scroll down for a second, language in para 5.6 is a little bit.
We're in 5.6.
Okay, so where does it say this? I'm just trying to read as the screen's delayed a little bit behind you. 5.6 looks like it got deleted. So that's different than our
Than what you have? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe I just assumed that was 5.6. On mine,
Yeah, mine.
Where it says in the event of an unplanned multi-day facility closure.
Oh, okay. Yep, it's still here. It's right
we'll
here.
have to redistribute the ICE contracts so that all ICE users are universally impacted. That sounds like you're going to make we're not happy till you're not happy type phrase. You could rephrase that to say to minimize the impact on all ICE users, and that makes it sound like you're helping them out rather than trying to hurt everybody equally.
Very good point.
5.7, the hours of operation, I would recommend that paragraph get moved to the area where you're talking about when it's closed on holidays, and that you can put the hours of operation up with when you're not operating. And you'll all be very happy to note that marks the end of my notes on this policy.
The end of my notes too. Okay, anybody else, any further input? No, Nikki, is there anything else you think needs?
Oh, Councillor Vandendriessche.
Oh, you're on the end of my screen. Go.
I'm so sorry. I want to go back to the insurance portion of it here. Where did I see that? I just have a quick question. You $2 million liability in here. Oh, where did I see it? Oh, here. When we're looking at 6.2, does this? What if a group of a family books the ice around Christmas time, whatever, and they have their due upstairs in the arena, and then they rent the ice? Do they have to carry $2 million liability?
So the $2 million is the minimum amount that we require. So in the past, everybody had to supply their own COI, so they did have to supply the insurance, but we do have the facility user insurance program now. Which was something that council voted on a number of years ago through risk management, which we've implemented. And it is, it's a fee for service. So we would add that insurance on. So if they don't have their own insurance through their own insurance policy, then we will add the insurance cost on. And it ranges between, depending on what is happening on the ice or in one of our community rooms, it depends. It's either $5 to $7 an hour, basically. And then it could get up to $10 an hour, depending on the amount of people on the ice at one time.
Oh, okay. That's and families can probably manage.
Yeah.
I was wanting to check with that because we don't do it here, but in Norfolk, you can rent the ice and the room upstairs, and it's a fee, and maybe that's incorporated. Nobody ever asked for insurance. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
If I could add to that, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Van Passen.
That was one of my issues as well, Nikki. That is not the kind of insurance that somebody who's going to do once in their lifetime rent the ice in the room for a family get together. They're not going to get that. So why wouldn't you just build that into the price of the ice rental? Make note of it in there that you know, this is including the insurance of X dollars, and they won't have to fill out a form, they won't have to go find out whether they have it. That's not something a normal person's gonna have. The organized leagues will have them, even the commercial leagues and the beer leagues, they have them. But a one-off event is not gonna have that insurance. So just build it in the price and get rid of that paragraph, so.
Through you, Madam Chair. That is a really good point, Councillor Van Passen. The difficulty with that, though, is it is dependent on the number of people and what the event is going to be. So it's hard to build it right into the price for us to be able to advertise those prices, but we can certainly do it in the back end. But we would have to notify them because we would need information from them in order to be able to apply the proper fee.
Well, then just work out with the insurance company that here's the price for 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and just make that the price. Like when you're talking between $5 and $10, if the price is now 100 and, you know, if the ice is 150, you're gonna add $10 for the insurance, it's 160, you just say it's 160 for everybody. Nobody's gonna question whether they got ripped by $1 or $2 because they're already paying $160. That last dollar is not gonna make any difference to them.
Nikki, I think maybe would it be a good option to say kind of reverse the way that policy is written so that it kind of promotes like, hey, you can get this insurance through the county, but if you don't want to use that insurance, this is what you need to be on the same level and accepted. Okay. Any other input?
Just one more question for Nikki. What is sort of the timeline that you would like this recommendation from this committee in front of council or council and committee?
Well, I'd love to bring back a further draft to you guys. If you are in support of what we're working on, the sooner we can get that support, the better. My next plan of attack would be to getting this out to the community groups, the minor hockey teams and the figure skating clubs to be able to have their say in it as well, before we finalize a draft to bring back to this committee for final review.
We did have a bit of discussion with the chair before the meeting officially started, because there's certain members that have a lot of input on here that were not available today. And what we could do is have the chair draft a letter sort of highlighting the comments from the committee that would go to council and committee or to council whenever the minutes are recorded. That would speed up the process, and the chair would have time to gather the input from the missing member today. If that is better for you, I'm sure that we could persuade the chair to do that. And I think she had some sort of very nice, polite wording for a motion for what we've done today on this report.
All right, yeah. Ready? No more discussion? Okay. Totally willing to draft a letter based on the comments on this meeting, and then we can reach out to Ryan and Jamie as well and add their input, and I can have that prepared for next June 16th meeting, and then we can maybe approve that, and then that gets forwarded with the minutes, as Councillor Van Passen was saying. And so for now, we could pass the motion that staff be requested to consider incorporating comments received from the Recreation Advisory Committee into the ice allocation policy. Okay, so do I have a mover?
I'd be happy to second Mr. Anderson's motion.
Okay. Moved by Paul, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All in favor?
Sorry, through you, Chair, should the motion include that the information by Nikki be received as information as well, and that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So everyone's okay with that addition?
Do you want to also add a sentence about the chair drafting a letter?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so we have the three. Okay,
And what would be the best date to get that letter to?
Well, I'll have it ready for our next meeting, which is supposed to be the 16th, knock on wood, everyone. And I'll have that ready for then, and then we can, you know, amend that during the meeting if need be and have that approved. So, Julie, do you want to just read out the motion one more time and we will vote on it?
sure. Stop me if there's anything I missed here, but this is what I have. That the draft ice allocation policy presented by Nikki Sloat, Director of Recreation, be received as information. And that staff be requested to consider the comments of the Recreation Advisory Committee when writing the new ice allocation policy. And further, that the chair draft a letter to outline the committee's suggestions regarding the draft policy for the next meeting.
Okay, all right, moved by Paul, seconded by Councillor Van Passen, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, and now we are on to Norfolk Community Day. So Nikki, do you have that update?
I don't have anything formal to update. I was hoping that we would have had a handout to give that we'd be able to hand out or send to you guys and get it, but I haven't gotten anything yet from the Norfolk Community Day Committee, and Brandon was busy with the staff barbecue today. So unfortunately, our administrative coordinator has been off due to a death in her family, and she won't be back for a number of weeks yet either. So Brandon didn't have the ability to get that right away for us today, but I'll make sure that we get that flyer sent out to you guys so everybody knows what's going on. The event is taking place on June 18th. It is taking place, I'm sure most of the councillors are aware, because I think you guys are all participating in your area wards. But there are events going on in every area of Norfolk County. It ranges from free skates, free swims, free aquafit classes. There's some kayak demonstrations. There's some pickleball demonstrations. There's a number of community organizations that have jumped on board as well, and are planning on participating. There's Touch the Truck events going on in a number of municipalities. There's all kinds of stuff happening. There's, I think, cakes with the councilors. Councillor Van Andrieschi, you can help me out on this one. Cakes with counselors in all the wards, or something is going on in each of the wards with the counselors, which is an awesome addition too. And if there is anybody that is willing and wanting to help out or donate some time, they're always looking for some volunteers.
All right, Julie, do we need to pass a motion to that as information, or can we just go on?
Yeah, I believe we should pass a motion to accept that as information, yeah.
Okay, so let's propose a motion to receive the presentation about, or update about Norfolk Community Day as information, moved by Councillor Van Andrieschi, seconded by Chris, and all in favor? And that carries, and now we're on to Engage Norfolk.
So Engage Norfolk is a new platform that the municipality has to be able to get more information out into the public and into the residents, and have some dialogue with them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a survey. It can be some questions that begin dialogue, almost like a Facebook post where people can go in and comment, and we get to be able to record those comments and be able to utilize those comments and actually make some decisions and things out of it. So we're hoping that we can get something from this committee or in conjunction with our rec team to get some of that dialogue going. And I'm really hoping that we can maybe start some of the questions even around this ice allocation policy. It would be one of the spots that we might be able to use it for, as well as, and we'll see that a little bit further here when we get into talking about arena usage, in trying to engage people to find out, you know, what are some of the options that we can do to help sell some of that non-prime time, or get more use in the facilities Monday to Friday, midday or whatever. And it's a platform that we can use. So we can post a survey. So if a survey is what we think is best, We can do that. We can do the whole dialogue type of thing. Or we can do a combination of both. So I'm kind of leaning to a combination of both is what I'd like to see coming up soon. But that's where we're at the moment. So we had a preliminary discussion with our comms department at the beginning of this week. And then our team is going to start working on putting some things together to get posted up there, and would look to our committee here for more input. So I think if we can think about things, or if I'll try to get something to you guys prior to the next agenda that maybe can have a discussion regarding that, ideas and things that maybe we can get posted up there and see what your thoughts.
Okay, any comments from anyone? No, I'm definitely excited about Engage Norfolk, and I definitely like the hybrid model that you mentioned there. I'm wondering, I don't know how much you know about how the app would work yet, but would it be possible to say if we had basically like a suggestion box electronically, but could users tag like the subject matter of those suggestions, like so that it goes, rather than being one big pile of suggestions, it goes to the appropriate staff?
Mm-hmm. Through you, Madam Chair, I honestly don't know the whole workings of the system. Our communications department are the lead on it, so they've had a few things that are up there already. The growth management study, I believe, is up there. There was something to do with heritage and culture that was up there. I think their strategic review was up on it. So I think there is definitely that ability for it to go to the people that needs to see the information, for sure.
Alrighty, I'm going to suggest that we maybe pass a motion to say that all members just bring forward some brainstorm ideas to discuss Engage Norfolk at our next meeting. Does that sound good with everyone? Okay, could I have a mover? Oh, Councilor Fasten, seconder Chris, and all those in favor? And carries. Okay, no other business or discussion or communications, guys?
Sorry, Chair, you have one more item, and that's 7.4.
Sorry,
Oh,
the
okay.
usage statistics update. Nikki, thank you.
I'm going to try to be real quick because I know you guys are probably wanting to get out of there. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen. I will provide this whole presentation to you so that you have the actual documents to see things a little bit more in detail, because some of it gets into some pretty good detail with the statistics, but I'm going to try and go over it fairly quickly. I'm going to share my screen and get the slideshow on. So, share. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
All right.
Yeah.
So the committee had asked for some arena use statistics. You're going to have to bear with me a little bit, because once we are now into this new system, and I've got some really great data, which you're going to see on one of the slides, it is simple, it's easy. We can change the parameter so that we can just see prime, we can just see certain hours, it's great when it comes to that. Our old system, the usage statistics are a little less desirable, but they still give us a good indication of what things look like. So what we're just going to review quick is arena usage, what has affected use, what has affected usage. Oh, I must have, sorry, that there is a second piece to that. What are and can we do to increase usage, and any questions or thoughts? So the first one is just a real quick high level yearly comparison. You'll see that I did not put in the 2020, 2021, because with it being COVID, those numbers were just pointless to even look at. So 2018, 2019, the total available hours. Now you're going to see here, and this is what I mean by the difference between the methods created for calculating. So now with our system, we can actually input the actual hours of operation within the facilities right directly into the program. So the program itself identifies what hours are actually available. So the ones that are identified there for 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020 are a bit higher for a couple of reasons. One is it was a manual calculation, and two, it didn't include any COVID closures. So the 2021-2022 piece, we have tightened up the actual hours that are available. So what you're seeing is the hours used versus what actually is available, as well as a slight reduction because we were closed from January 5th to January 30th of this year. So based on this, you can see that for now, because just coming out of COVID, we are pretty much close on all our allocations from previous years. So there hasn't been a real big change. What you're going to also see here is total prime available. Again, those numbers are very different. One is because of the closure, but also because this is an actual calculation, as well as we did do the change in the prime time from the 4 till 11 o'clock down to the 5 till 10. So that has made a little bit of a difference on the available prime time hours. And then the non-prime, again, same thing. So you'll see that the non-prime hours have actually gone up, but that is because of the way that we've defined prime versus non-prime. So when you're looking at the available prime percentage allocations, we actually are higher now than we ever were. And that could also be because we've gone from 5 ice pads down to, or sorry, down from 6 ice pads down to 5. So that increase on prime has gone up. I could not calculate the non-prime percentage or non-prime used. I don't know, that was my own fault. When I ran all the reports, I did not run the non-prime hours. So I'm sorry, I do not have the actual non-prime hours used, although we could look at it based on total used and how much of it was prime time, but I did not get that on there. So my apologies on that.
It's 2031 and a quarter.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. So this one, and what I'm saying is this, I'm not sure how you guys are all seeing that. It's a large document on a small slide. And that's why I'm saying I am going to supply all of this to you so that you can actually see what we can actually show. So this is something that we have been able to put together from the reports we run out of Perfect Mind. So it goes down to, we've been able to calculate the whole season, which is the 6:30 to 11:30, which is our opening hours, versus the prime time, which we've identified in here as weekends only is 6:30 to 11:30. So that's Saturdays and Sundays. Our prime time is considered all day long. Prime time use for weekdays is from 5 p.m. till, and I chose 10:30 on there only because it goes till 10, but there's groups that are still on there at this point in time. And then the prime time use totals is just the combined total of these two columns into this one. So, and then you'll see at the bottom where we had reduced it by the hours that we were closed due to COVID from that in that month of January. So the bonus with the system is that it actually takes each rink separately. We also can add them in conjunction, and it also identifies all the different variety of uses. So these are what we call our services, and everything that's within the system is based on a service. So we've got the shinny skates and sticks and pucks, which is more like your hockey oriented programming of Norfolk County. We've got the recreational skating and county programs, which is your public skates, your parent and taught skates. We've got ice tournaments and carnivals. We've got ice pads, minor hockey. We've got ice pads, JUFA, ice pads general, ice pad figure skating, ice pad adult hockey, and administrative and maintenance. So these numbers are still a little skewed, and that is because we've just been fine tuning everything within our maintenance section as well. So we can now go into the system and actually block out the hours that are considered maintenance hours, which then would not be factored into the calculations. So in some cases, our calculations are still a little higher for the actual time available, because all of the maintenance hours are not necessarily recorded here. But moving forward, we will be able to have that fine-tuned so that everything that we print out of the system will be able to give us really good data and statistics that we can use for planning and programming later on. Any questions on this slide before I move to the next one? No? Okay. So this is how we had our arena usage statistics in the past. It was just a spreadsheet, and those numbers were plunked in by somebody typing them in. So again, the total number of hours used, it was based on a calculation, you know, Monday to Friday, these many hours each day. So it didn't necessarily calculate into any time that may have been closed because of equipment malfunction or anything like that. Whereas in our new system, we can take care of all of that stuff. So in 2018, 2019, we still had the same similar types of usage definitions broken out by arena, but again, very subjective, these numbers are. This was the 2019, 2020, same as the 2018, 2019 method. So just kind of a little bit of background so that you have a really good idea on the usage statistics and what we can, you know, do to change them or not change them. So what affected it in 2021, 2022? Obviously COVID. Those are all our closures from 2021 and into 2022. So you can see why I didn't include the 2019 or the 2020, 2021 season, because it really wasn't worth trying to calculate. And I would have had to have done it manually because we were still in our old class system. So I'm sorry, I did not do that year. So what has affected usage? What else? So lingering effects of COVID, it's changed the way we think, the way we act, the things we do. The Ice Allocation Policy, it permits cancellations with only 72 hours notice, which isn't enough time to remarket the ice. There's staffing implications. The operations team have suffered some staffing reductions and therefore aren't always available to staff the rinks for the rentals, and staff must be present in the facility to operate programs or rentals. So we cannot have any user group in there, whether they're using a meeting room or whether they're on the ice, without a staff member present in the building because of the refrigeration. And then staffing implications also with the rec team. We've suffered some staffing reductions as well, and therefore do not have the administrative support to market and respond to inquiries. We're doing our best. And the reason I'm saying is, remember, there's no administrative support and only one facility booking clerk for all arenas, halls, sports fields, and pools. So that is a lot of facilities that we have and a lot of things that we need to do. And we do not have the staffing to be able to do it and be able to meet what the community and people want. So just getting that little plug out there to you, Councillor Van den Driesch and Councillor Van Passen, that maybe hopefully sometime in the future, if we bring forward something, that there is some consideration given there. Perfect Mind. So what are we doing? So what we've done is Perfect Mind, self-serve option. We've implemented the public facing for the ice booking December 2021. Like I said, we had 43 reservations and rental contracts completed up to March 31st, which is a bonus. I did throw in the next little piece here that was the self-serve option for the public-facing sports fields and outdoor courts, which we just implemented, and we're already starting to see some uptake on it, which is awesome. So that also incorporates the pavilions and anything like that. So people can go online, they can see it's available, they can book it. It comes directly to our facility booking clerk, which reduces the work that she has to do, and it has been really helping. We've been increasing our social media and website presence, working with the communications team to increase awareness and marketing print media campaigns. New for the fall, the programs team has or is going to be promoting some arena daytime programming. So you'll be seeing an adult rec hockey league that we're going to be getting out there to see if we can get some interest and hopefully generate some new use during the day. It kind of goes along with Councillor Van Passen, what you were saying in the past, where there used to be that Stelco league. There used to be an OPP league. There used to be a number of different leagues that happen during the day for those shift workers. So the plan is to try to get out to some of those organizations like Toyotetsu and Stelco and Esso and see if we can can, you know, get some interest in getting some people out into a hockey league during the day. The big thing is nobody wants to run it. So if our programs team can take on that role to be the administrative piece to it, then we're hoping that we can generate some interest. We're also working with the figure skating club to add ticket ice. So that's ice that the skaters can come out on their own time and be able to pay a price to be able to utilize it, which doesn't have to be in the prime time. It can be, you know, that 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock time frame or early morning ice. And that's been a suggestion by our figure skating clubs. Parent and Top programs, obviously, Family Sticks and Pucks. That was a new one that we started during COVID because there was a lot of parents that wanted to get out there with their kids and shoot the puck, but they couldn't do it with any of the programming we were doing. So we've implemented that one, which has kind of taken off. It's been slow, but it's starting to come. And then also new for fall of 2022, we are working on some, which has nothing to do with the arenas. I did want to throw it in there is that we are working with some of the community halls to implement some drop-in space for pickleball and other partnerships with the seniors groups. And we've got some daycares that are looking at potentially using some of our halls during the day through the week, as well as promoting some workshops and other drop-in programming. So what else can we do? So Ice allocation policy, if we change the method of allocation, if we require large users like minor hockey, figure skating to take less desirable times, as we've mentioned before, as part of their allocation, whether it's 5%, 10% in that non-prime time or that less desirable time, it may help. Use the Engage Norfolk platform and have some dialogue with residents on what would be good uses. We could post a survey. We can close our facilities during daytime non-use time. We can review daytime user rates. We can increase partnerships with community organizations. And we also have the recreation facility review strategy piece, which has been approved by council, but has been put on hold until a decision is made on the larger corporate facility review. So those are all things that are on the horizon or things that we can implement or start working towards. And that is it.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Paul?
Hey, Nikki, I noticed that the ice time on the last slide there, you suggested opening up at as early as 6 a.m. That's earlier than your normal opening hours now. Is that feasible with your staff limitations?
Through you, Madam Chair. We used to be open at 6 a.m., Paul. We did shorten things up because of staffing implications, but it would be something that we would definitely have to work with the operations team in whether or not it would even be something that's feasible.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, by the way.
Councillor Vanden? Yeah. Oh, you did see her, Kate.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Nikki, I think it's a great presentation and appreciate it. The idea of our other going on that, I know you added it in, but the other facilities we have, and you mentioned daycares, there are other summer program groups that people would like to run, but the price of the halls are way too high. And if they're going to be run on a consistent basis, say for instance, they run a summer program that's a 20-day or a 15-day or how many it is. Is there any consideration for a decrease in price but of consistency so that we know they're going to use a consistent basis, number of days or whatever, that they could get a little bit more reasonable rate? Because I've heard that as well with say our daycare down here that's starting to look at other waiting lists. I mean, there's the people there to serve it. They're just looking for the space available.
Mm-hmm. So through you, Madam Chair, that's a really good point, Councillor Vanden Driesche. We have been in contact with a couple of users. One was in Port Rowan and one was in Waterford, and that really was the stumbling block. We can bring a report to council. I mean, we can't change the user fees, but we can certainly bring a report to council to request council to reduce the fees or waive the fees or whatever. But that leads me to a different discussion as well. We are supposed to be doing some user fee review with the finance department, and one of the biggest items that I had wanted to look at for the 2022 was our hall structure, because the next piece of our public facing portal is to get the community halls up so that people can book them as well. The difficulty we're facing right now is our user fee structure. So the user fee structure we currently have is really not conducive to being able to have our public portal up and working properly. So we do really need to take a look at our rates and come up with something that actually makes sense, because they made sense in a number of years ago when they were first implemented in the small, medium, large halls, but there's a lot of things that have changed since then. And booking for an hour at $15 an hour really honestly doesn't even cover any type of cost recovery, let alone even our function coordinators getting in there to be able to do their work. But we also need to have what you're saying in mind, where we've got those community groups that really want to use the hall and can use it to offer some really worthwhile things to our residents, but they can't afford to pay what we're asking for. So that is a council decision, and things that we do need to bring forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Nikki. But at the end of the day, sometimes $1 is worth better than no dollar.
Mhm.
So we have to
Mhm.
look, we have to be realistic at that as well. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because different rates, different styles. Sometimes you only use the kitchen in a community center, or sometimes you just use the main hall, or sometimes, but I totally agree with you. User pay in a sense that, say, for instance, there's community groups that are using, say, just a small boardroom. We're not paying anything. There should be a fee for switching the
Correct.
lights. I don't think we should get it all for free.
Agreed.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other input? Chris, do you guys have your hands up? I can't see you very well.
No, I'm good,
No,
thank.
good.